I did my undergraduates here, so I was taught by Arvid Carlsson. He was teaching at the time, the later Nobel laureate, which is very nice to be back. I'm primarily a clinician, that's how I view myself, so I see a lot of patients, and many of them are very obese. Just a quick reminder of what children looked like 120 years ago. This is Danish painter Krøyer, born in Norway. Magnitude of the problem was my title, and that implies both a sense of prevalence and a sense of importance. And for those of you who are not Swedish, just a brief thinking about why Sweden is a gold mine for epidemiologists. We have personal registration numbers for all residents. We have great registers. We have a public healthcare system which is paid by together over taxes, so most people would go there. And we have most children in schools, in public schools. That has changed a little bit. But we can actually track and trace and follow our population very, very well. So we have a lot of nice, very good registers in Sweden. However, we do not have a growth chart national register surveillance system. That would have been great, but we lost that. Would have been typical Swedish, but we don't have it. So instead we have to think of good regional data, and this is from Stockholm. It is almost everybody, almost everyone who's 4 years in Stockholm. And you can clearly see that it looks like the prevalence of obesity and overweight, the green ones, is stable between 2001 and 2008. And this is 180,000 children. We have a very egalitarian society, but we do have big socioeconomic differences. This is still 4-year-olds, and you can see that in some of the less privileged suburbs we have twice the rates as we have in some of the inner cities areas in Stockholm, in 4-year-olds. If we move to the 10 to 11-year-olds, this is nice because some of the people who wrote these nice articles are in this room. But up here we have Sweden. This is 10 to 11-year-olds, a nice review article in 2000 and 2005. And we can see that the levels are circling around 20% overweight and obesity. Relatively stable. This is a very nice, somewhat old, but a very nice study because it's one of the few longitudinal studies we have. All the children born in county of Östergötland followed. They were born in 1991 and they have been followed. And this doesn't show in the picture, but I've read the article. So half of the children that are fat, are overweight here, are still overweight here. So obesity doesn't grow away. It's tracking obesity is possible here. So to conclude, this is our Swedish national growth chart. It's a hybrid for those of you who are not Swedish. This is the average, this is the Cole reference, BMI 25, BMI 30, the IUTF reference. It says WHO, but it's not, it's the IUTF. The Cole name is down there, somebody screwed that up. And then we have, on top of that, we have the Karlberg reference. Oof, this is difficult. The Karlberg reference that is used to construct the 2SD and the 3SD of our population. So these are Swedish. So of course this is a study too, giving us this line. But we do have this nice data for 4-year-olds. We have nice and plentiful of data of 10 to 11-year-olds. And we have beautiful data, I haven't talked about those, for conscripts, millions of patient years published in very fancy magazines and nice. But we have very little data here. And I think we have ourselves to blame a little bit. We don't do research on teenagers. They are so difficult, they don't show up. And they go into puberty, and that's very complicated because boys go into puberty later and we have to assess puberty. And to assess puberty in a study, you need doctors, and doctors are scarce. So if you stay on the safe side of puberty, you can ask anybody to take height and weight of the child. But if we work on adolescents, we need doctors. And also the children are no longer going to the public school closest to their home. So we cannot use school location as a proxy for socioeconomic standard anymore. So I think we need to do more work there. But I found one nice adolescent study typically done for something else. It was done to see the effects of nutrition after diminished iron supplementation of wheat flour. But they have a nice cohort, and then they picked it up later and did it over again in 2000, where they looked at selected schools with different socioeconomic standards. And this is a complicated picture. Girls here, boys here, and the different cohorts. Ooh. Here is the older children, the first cohort, and here's the second cohort. And there is no significant difference. It looks like it. The number of thin girls decreases, but there is no real significant differences, they claim here. The only significant difference in the material, both for boys and girls, is when they look at the Nordic and the non-Nordic children, the increase among the non-Nordic is dramatic for both boys and girls. And to be non-Nordic here, you have to have 2 non-Nordic parents. Altogether, the prevalence of overweight and obesity here is low, I think, around 12 to 14%. And of course, this is also relatively old already. It's lower than in the 11-year-olds, and I don't know if we think so in this room. This is a very recent study by Lundqvist and Lee, and they have done a beautiful register study with millions. It's an open cohort, it's 11 years, it's everybody, and it's 1 million children almost in the southern parts of Sweden, where they have looked at socioeconomic factors, and they have checked hospital registers for the diagnosis of E66.9, that is obesity, and we know that is always not always reliable. But anyway, they find a lot of things that are more common among these children. To have older parents, to have a father coming from another country, etc. But what interests me is that they found also a neighborhood deprivation, correcting for everything else. Living in a less privileged neighborhood makes you 70% more likely to be obese. And what is that? Is that the way you move, or safety, or what is it? This is already discussed. Just a few words on the National Obesity Center. We have existed since 1997, founded by Professor Marcus, who's talking later. It's possible for us to have 400 patients, so we have 400 patients, 394. And it's a team-based treatment, and we have a big register where we follow. It's a strict framework with team-based, when we do different things within this framework. I looked at, just to big a little bit of a description of who these children are. So I just looked for this talk on the children that entered last year. And there were 17 newcomers. Half of them were teenagers. And we managed to keep almost 92% in the program. And all of you working with this know that that is a big effort to have 92% still with us. 18% had elevated liver enzymes. Only 2 had diabetes, one of them a type 1. So diabetes is still not a very common problem among our patients. We have, in our group of 400, we have 8 type 2 diabetics, which is different from the US. They're quite heavy by Swedish standards. They are over, if I put a little growth chart there, they're over the 0.3 SD, so they are somewhere up here. And we have a special category for the ones that leave the paper. So they are over 42, and those really heavy ones were 5. So they are quite, what do I do? Sorry. Thank you. And a third of them has no parent of Nordic origin, and 70% have a neuropsychiatric disorder. And this is a new thing for us. So many of our patients have ADHD, Asperger, other cognitive or neuropsychiatric disorders that makes traditional treatment very difficult and challenging. That's a new reality. And also the new hypothalamic obesity is is coming. Even if they don't have obesity yet, they have disturbed glucose handling. This is a beautiful work done by Anna Ek, a junior doctor at our place. She has looked at 135 children, and a third of them at least have impaired fasting glucose. She did frequently sampled intravenous glucose tests, cumbersome but nice, and a lot of other things with these. So they have clearly a glucose disturbance, so we can ask them, will they get diabetes as well? My conclusions are about 1 in 6, I don't really know, adolescents in Sweden are overweight or obese. Socioeconomic factors are important also in our country, and national surveillance would be great. I don't know why we don't have that. More epidemiological studies on adolescents are needed. More studies on effects of health and well-being are needed, and programs targeting teenagers are needed. And we need good control groups. I think we have in Sweden an enormous potential of having big data as controls. We have records of everything. We can just run it against the normal population. Bariatric surgery clearly has a role to play, and we are very happy for the collaboration with Torsten. So this is our summer's camp. A challenge to go with these heavy youngsters to a camp. My team hasn't arrived yet. Their train was late. But you can imagine going away with these children to a normal campsite and the bunk beds break. Right. So, but this is thanks from our team, and we had a visiting prince when we took this picture. Thank you.